There you go.
All right, you want to talk Nakato at 62 points or Dan Hollins at 87 points?
Welcome to the Rugby Rant podcast show, your premier North American rugby podcast. Growing rugby, one fan at a time.
And welcome, Rugby Rant fans. It's the big guy, Scott Ferrara. We're at episode 146, 4 away from that episode 150. Man, we're coming into almost our 5th season. It's crazy. I know, seriously. And you know,
there's a
Rick
guy right
is
here who's
I know
been with
Rick
us almost all along that process.
Seriously, I think between him and Mike Perezzini, we have to go back and count to see who has the most appearances here. But Rick Collins, the Jakl King from the Jakl
need to keep track of that. I'm gonna have to remember that for next time.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get an intern to work for free, definitely. But Rick, thanks for stopping by. We're gonna have a great episode, and you know, obviously, we start off every episode with Around the Pitch.
When we pick up the ball, we also pick up a legacy. A legacy that stretches beyond your current team. A legacy built on the backs of those who came before you with hard work. And for those who will come after you, we promise it won't be easy. But we'll be there, supporting you on and off the field.
All right, so Rob, hit that around the pitch topic, buddy.
Well, I'm wearing the jersey to honor the man. Cam Dolan last weekend against Romania gets his 100th point as a U.S. Eagle. I think he's in the top 5 in caps. I lost track. I always have to talk to Terry just to check in and figure out, you know, to be reminded of what cap he's on. But he's closing in quickly on being number 1. So I'm crossing my fingers, hoping for Cam has good health because he can be that number 1 most capped Eagle. But congratulations to him from getting that 100th point. Got that try, the opening salvo against Romania.
Rick, what do you got for us, buddy?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the biggest news points this summer, this offseason, has been about unionization of MLR players. And there's been talk of that in the past, but I think it took a big step up this summer. There's been multiple posts by other unions, organizations supporting them. And then obviously this post, which came on the 7th of this month, we fully understand the necessity for MLR franchises to find their footing as the game goes. And we are aware that this may necessitate transactions and relocation. We hope to see a day when the league respects the players enough to provide them with complete information before making announcements public vis-a-vis the Rugby ATL move, which we will be discussing soon. And part of this is just they're getting a lot of support. I think most of the fans support the union. Obviously, the pay is not, fantastic, and we understand it's a growing league. So there's support on both sides, but we want to see a healthy league, and part of that is making sure that the players are well taken care of. So hopefully, whether the union is accepted in the next year or two or not, the owners do right by the players, and they're better informed and they're better taken care of as we go into the future for MLR.
Yep, and hopefully we'll see that National Labor Relations Board decision come back soon so we can see what the next stepping stone is. Obviously, like Rick said, it's not just about pay. It's about health and safety. It's about travel. It's about,
being informed.
Being informed, exactly.
Team is going to just pick up and leave the next day, as we've just seen. The players are informed enough in advance that they can make a better decision for themselves and their families.
Exactly. So now we're coming to me. My Around the Pitch topic was obviously the PR7s. If you didn't check it out, I had a whole bunch of content going into that weekend. I was pretty much giving you what the halftimes and the finals were of all those matches and kind of giving my little take on what's going on. I got to interview Elena Olsen and just talk about the rise of PR7s and what the future looks like, and it looks bright. So go check us out. Actually our new handle for Instagram is the Rugby Rant because unfortunately the Rugby Rant pod got stolen, but that's what happens sometimes. So check us out on our new handle on Instagram at the Rugby Rant, and then it's at Rugby Rant pod everywhere else. Check out that interview, check out my stuff. And it was a really good event. Again, they capped off a great season with a good event in DC. The United Championship winners were already kind of picked based upon the fact that the experts men's and women's teams both went to the finals, so they were going to pick up the most points. So they had won that United Championship even prior to the start of DC, just by mathematics. And then we had the women's Looney side winning against my locals, unfortunately, 21-5. But it was good to see Alev Kelter bring her a strong Looney squad over for a win. And then our buddy Patrick Madden captained the Loggerheads to a win over the new team, the Steel Toes. The Steel Toes were hot, straight out of Pittsburgh. My buddy Aki Raymond played a hell of a match for the Steel Toes in that final, but couldn't round it out, and got a nice picture with Patrick and gave him a big hug. He's one of the I think he was the first draft pick we might have ever interviewed on RPK, Rob, if my memory serves.
I think so, yeah.
He might have been not even a draft pick. I think he was a draft. It was before. We interviewed him prior to the draft, right? So yeah, I think that was the first year of the draft, and he was one of our first interviews.
He's a huge friend of the show, and I love the kid. He's such a great kid. He's such a great attitude, and just love seeing. I sent him a message after the win, like congratulations, and he all due respect to what he's accomplished and what he's doing with PR7s and continuing his career.
I believe back-to-back for the Loggerheads men's. Rick, go.
The Steel Toes had several past, present, and maybe future Jakls on them. So
maybe future.
Yeah, there's one player that has a father that I played with here locally that would like to stay local. So
nice.
Crossing fingers that gets,
when the signing period comes, hopefully we'll see an announcement. That's great. And before we get to our sponsors, we're actually going to give you guys a twofer. We're doing two separate topics. Rick alluded to one of the topics is the move by Rugby ATL, or whatever they're going to be called now. That'll be the first topic. And then the second topic, we're actually going to talk about the men's Eagles win against Romania and preview a little bit of their upcoming match against Portugal. But before that, we're going to get a word from our sponsors.
Tighthead Brewing Company is not just Chicago's premier location to watch rugby and enjoy quality ales and lagers. It is also a great place to enjoy local acts performing live music every Thursday and Saturday nights. Additionally, their Wednesday night trivia nights are something not to be missed. Tighthead is located in Mundelein, Illinois, and easily accessible for many Chicagoans, as it is just steps away from the metro. Owner Bruce Durr and the Tighthead staff are dedicated to ensure your microbrew experience is as tight as their beers. Bruce's love for rugby extends beyond the origin of his brewery's name. Tighthead is committed to supporting the rugby community. This includes his support for Lake County RFC and our own Rugby Rant podcast show. Tighthead's tap room is like the familiar rugby clubhouse in which friends and teammates can meet, socialize, and enjoy the wide variety of brews on tap. Regardless of whether your palate enjoys a good IPA or a dark barrel-aged brew, Tighthead can deliver. Hey, Chicago, when you want rugby, Tighthead Brewing Company will satisfy your thirst. Tighthead, it's worth more than a try.
And welcome back, folks. The sponsors are what makes the Rugby Rant go round, so we really appreciate the sponsors we have on the show. And what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about the move from Rugby ATL. It was announced last week that Rugby ATL Ownership had sold the product and that it was moving. There are speculations on where it's moving. There's speculations on ownership. There's a lot of commotion, as Rick spoke about previously in the Around the Pitch segment. Rugby Now, which was the organization that's trying to unionize the MLR players, coming out and voicing their opinion on the matter. There's been a ton of opinions. Between me and Rob just texting back and forth, and it's something that I honestly cherish, because I can hit Rob with anything I'm thinking of just off the cuff, and he'll bring me back, be like, but what about this, this, and this? I'll really we'll really kind of dive deep in it, and I really appreciate that back and forth. But actually, we're going to start off with Rick, because he's wearing the old school Rugby ATL gear. So Rick, give us your thoughts about this new ATL move.
Yeah, so this is actually a Connor Cook signed jersey that he sent to me. I was lucky enough to play with him briefly with the Dallas Harlequins, and communication with him a little bit over the years. I think it's obviously better to keep a club in the league, even if they've got to move. It happens in every sport. It's disappointing to have a team leave that literally 2 years ago was in the championship game. And I think, had maybe LA not been doing some shady stuff under the table, ATL might have been an actual champion that year. So I think, it's also very difficult knowing the story of the original owner of the team, and that basically his death has led to the death of Rugby ATL. I'm glad that somebody has bought it and that they will be at least reinvigorating it, putting money into it rather than letting the club die. The worst part about this, though, was they dumped a bunch of money into rebranding, which nobody wanted, and I don't think was necessarily, something that they needed to be done. And then everything that followed after that was just an S show in my book. The way that they treated the fan base after announcing it, the way that they spoke to the fan base during the live YouTube or Facebook stream or whatever, which they immediately deleted because they didn't want that shared around, because it was very clear that two of the people on that set didn't want to be on that video, and the other person kept repeating the same things over and over, as if she was a customer service rep for a Fortune 500 company dealing with some lowly person like myself on the other end of the line. So it's really disappointing. I'll be very excited to see where they go. I've heard, I'm sure this is a rumor that's widely passed around, that it will be Los Angeles. But wherever they end up, hopefully it's a location where not only do we have a good rugby fan base, but we have a potential growing rugby fan base. And I can't disagree with moving to LA. I think what the Geltinis were able to create there in terms of momentum was really good. LA is obviously a very difficult sports town in general, but I think it can be successful there, and I would love to see another Western Conference team. It just seems like all the newest rumors and bids that we've heard of have all been in the Eastern Conference. So can't hurt to have another Western Conference team actually in the West, not Chicago in the West. Chicago needs to join the East, and that's the way it should be.
I mean, Nick Benson, are you listening? Because Rick's throwing it down here as far as what he wants to see. I think I think those are good points. I think
I'm not sure Nick likes us, but anyway.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. It sounds like he's been ducking us. He was supposed to come, and don't get me wrong, he was supposed to come on right after the MLR championship, and like a lot of people, he did have travel issues, and I know he had travel issues. I think Matt McCarthy was stuck in Chicago for like 3 extra days, unfortunately, trying to fly home. I swear to God.
Back.
Yeah,
it's try not to get him back.
It was no, like seriously though, like everybody's been having travel rules, but that particular weekend being after July 4th and all that, I think really
that's crazy. A lot of people. I hadn't heard that. That's funny though.
Yeah, like Matt McCarthy was like stuck for a while. Got back home. He's a bro, so he stuck it out. But Nick Benson unfortunately has not recommitted to an interview date. Maybe gotta start putting my big guy for commissioner back up there. But no, going on your points, I think I'm gonna kind of get in depth on my own feelings on this after Rob. I don't want to steal any of his thunder, but I think what you said, you've hit a lot of things on the head that most fans are thinking. Not that I don't think you're not people call me an insider or some shit, but like you have a voice like we do, voice of the fans. I think you hit a lot of stuff on the head.
Yeah.
Rumors are rumors until they're there's some truth to those rumors. We don't really report on them. That's the one thing we do take professionally generally is that portion. So
there are definitely people though that when I hear the rumor come from them, I take it at much higher level of reasonability than and obviously media for us for MLR is very minimal still. So
yeah, no, definitely. So I'm not trying to knock you on that one. Just, I say that every time we talk about rumor mill stuff, I like to put out that
disclaimer.
That disclaimer. But I think you're right. It's again sad for the fans. But Rob, what do you got with this one?
Yeah, so I want to put some things into context here. First of all, let me just say that I want to touch upon the struggle that I've had with this from a perception point. And what I mean by that is, and check out the RPK with Brandon Sparks, because I think he has a really interesting take, and it differs a little bit from a lot of what's out there. It echoes some of the MLR brass and some of the people that are insiders of the MLR, of course, because he is a former GM and director of rugby. But I think he really puts a nice optic or spin on it. But it basically, the bottom line is what a lot of people say, which is, in a young league, there's going to be growth. There's going to be a changeover. You're going to see some teams move. You're going to see some teams move away. And I get all that. My struggle is, this isn't the NFL in 1920. We live in a social media age, and information is transferred quite quickly. Mm-hmm. And what I think that does now in that context is that it shows some instability. Now, whether or not that's so or not so, I'm not saying. I'm just saying the perception is there that there's instability. Yeah. I mean, I've talked to some players. Some players are concerned, not just the players from ATL. Here we are in the second year in which players are having to figure out where they're supposed to go, where they're going to end up, and if they're going to be, do they need to move their families? What do they need to do? It goes back to the Rugby Now point that Rick touched upon and the around the pitch. There's ATL fans that, like Daryl McCormick, a good friend of the show that's been there, that's been following the team since its inception. And, he's had to go through this rebrand, and now he's having does he follow the LA team? I don't know. We know that, the Chicago Cardinals went to St. Louis, and they went to, now Arizona, and people followed them through that iteration. Will a lot of those fans follow this new iteration of ATL, or what's going to be ATL? What about sponsors? What are they saying? What about potential investors of teams that might be coming in or thinking we're jumping in? What are their perceptions? I think those are the things that are just cause me a bit of pause of concern. We're 1 year out of Gillygate. Just, if we didn't have that, we might have a totally different perception of what happened, right? But it's just unfortunately colored by that. Long term, it's a good result. Why? Well, obviously, LA is a huge market. That's important. GRV, which we know is controlling interest in elite, and probably this would have been the fourth team, relinquishes some of that ownership. So you diversify the ownership.
Pressure off their back.
Right. And I think that's important. The ownership group, and I have some insight onto that, but I'm not going to let it loose. The ownership group, let me just say to fans, it diversifies ownership. And what I mean by that is you have, New Zealanders own Rugby New York. You have Dallas, and that's Miami are Argentinian. Houston has a strong South African influence. The Hounds, of course, have a strong Irish influence, and the OGs have Scottish influence. And they will be diversified in their ownership group here, and that's great, because it shows an international interest in the MLR domestic competition. My issue goes back to what Rick's point is, and that is, if it was always up for sale, why go through the rebrand? Why not just keep it the way it was and let the team be sold? We know the new owners would rebrand and have some iteration, but at least fans would understand why that's happened, right? Instead of that shit show that happened, 8 months ago. I don't, Rick said it all. I don't want to get into the weeds in that, but bottom line is,
I didn't name any names, but there is a name that comes up in my mind every time about it.
Yeah, right. So that's my biggest concern. However, if LA rumors are true, and it does mean that the Chicago Hounds go to the East, I'll be able to see the Hounds and NOLA play twice. I'm guaranteed to see NOLA come to Chicago.
You might run into your buddy here, Scott, on occasion.
Yeah, Rob, Hammer has to come out to me this year. I got the newborn now.
I think we're going to make that happen. I heard there's a couch with my name on it.
A crib. A crib.
Oh, crib.
I don't know. He's gonna
Now
fit
you're
in
starting
the
to tap into, my fantasies and sorry, did I say that?
He's gonna share that.
But yeah, I think again, these are all valid points, and I'm going to start kind of my own little stream of consciousness here. Talking, Rick started off with the rebrand of Rugby ATL and the shit show that was that press conference that they had on Facebook, and I was one of the people there asking pertinent questions that they were dodging. Real questions, not the same old. There was a lot of people there just kind of being trolls. I was asking actual pertinent questions, and I felt like my questions weren't answered, and I believe they were reasonable questions to ask. And you're right. Picture paints 1,000 words. The people who were doing the rebrand, unfortunately, you have to know you're on video, and regardless of what's happening, you should stay all smiles. Rick also talked about the unfortunate passing of Marcus Calloway, and Global Rugby Ventures Group came in and bought ATL out from the Calloway family. And in my mind, GRV isn't their place in the MLR, right? If you go back to 2020, right? They came in, and what they were doing is they were just kind of giving teams capital, so that way over a long run, one team with one owner can do what they need to do. I'm just going to quote what one of the executives said to our buddy Martin Pangeli in 2020 after the Glendale Raptors withdrew. This is an article from October 2020. GRV, the executive said, "We want to do this in a way that brings capital into the league and scale things behind an owner-operator model. GRV only takes minority positions in teams behind management teams we believe in. It's like every other investment we make as an investor, where we were always on betting on that team. We do not see GRV as management team to run or control those said teams. Instead, we're here to support the individual game plan of each owner we invest alongside in. GRV does not vote in the MLR boardroom." I mean, that's what their game plan was. I think in their mind, there was a void, a power vacuum that needed to be filled to keep ATL afloat. I applaud the executives at GRV of filling that void and actually doing something outside of the realm they wanted to do to keep the franchise alive, right? That's regardless of the rebrand, they stepped in, and I do believe it was their point to try and sell, as fast as they could. I don't think there was a local buyer for whatever reason, so they did the best they could, and then they had to kind of ship it over. It sucks for the fans. I'm going to talk about the fan side now. It's really disheartened about all the Rattle fans that we've grown to love over the years. It was, regardless of how well they did, it was a premier. Exactly, it was a premier franchise in the East Coast. I mean, the NOLA ATL clashes where that's where the hate came from, right? It's like the Free Jacks and New York. It's something that you lose, and we don't want to lose that. Unfortunately, I think we kind of had to. If we wanted to keep the teams going and we don't want to end up like the Premiership. I mean, I would take the Premiership in the UK as the best model for professional rugby that we have, in my opinion, with the way they have their deals set up and the way they can transition their players out to play Six Nations and still have enough guys to play quality rugby. All those things, make a point of it's sustainable if you can keep it commercially sustainable. And we're seeing teams over there that can't do it on the commercial side. We know we could do it on the commercial side here. It's that sleeping giant attitude, right? We can get those fans and pluck them. We're at the verge of we're going to get the fans. They need to figure out how to keep the fans commercially. And honestly, it's easier said than done, apparently, when we're seeing, the Wasps and everybody going away. So it's really tough. But interestingly enough, when I was doing my research about the rebrand, if you go to the Rugby ATL website and you go under ownership, it still states that Marcus Calloway is the owner. I feel, no offense to the Calloway family, because they're pillars of the MLR, and that's, Marcus will always be remembered about the guy who started, one of the owners who started the MLR and lifted it up to where it can go. But if you can't even update that, as an ownership group, like it's those little details that we talk about all the time that make us seem unprofessional. And in my opinion, that's one of those things. You haven't changed it the entire time, and now you sold the franchise. So I think at the end of all this conversation, right, we're going to hit what Rick and Rob were talking about on the union side and the player side. Where's the openness? And me and Rob talk about it all the time with Ty. Like, it doesn't have to necessarily be open to the fans, but open to the players. You know,
employees.
It already leaked on friggin' Reddit before you had the official announcement anyway. So what's the damn difference if it leaked because you told a player and the player said something? In my opinion, because your employees, it's already a leaky ship because your employees are telling people and people are posting on Reddit anonymously because they don't want to do whatever they want to do. In my opinion, I think it's cowardly. If you're going to say it, go out and say it. Show who you are. But I think again, that's the failure on the league to provide openness to the players and the employees and the admins. And they have to find out on social media is, disgusting. And it harkens back to like Dallas in 2021.
Let me ask you this, because I just am not familiar with the entire touring side. Are there any ATL guys that were on tour with the Eagles?
Give me 1 second.
Was Morgan?
Thompson?
Nope.
Thompson was in. No, I'm talking the prop. Alex, how do you pronounce his last name? Morgan.
Morgan. No, didn't he hung him up. He hung him up. No, he hung him up. Yeah, no, I was just looking at the list. I didn't see any.
Okay.
I didn't see any.
That was my concern is, that last year, of course, I'm familiar with Bryce Campbell and, a couple other guys, Michael Duvall and a couple of other guys that were playing in Austin and a few guys in LA that, all of a sudden they're on tour with the Eagles or in South Africa and they get a call. Hey, you're no longer, on a team in Austin anymore, and the wife's going, what the hell are we going to do?
Yeah.
That's my concern. Fortunately, it doesn't sound like it happened in this case, but that's my concern, moving forward.
Rob, it's funny. The guy who used to be the head coach and helped start Rugby ATL happens to be the USA head coach. And maybe that should have been the first thing that we noticed was he did not pick anybody from Rugby ATL to be on the USA national team squad for this fall. I don't think there was anybody in camp from Rugby ATL. That should have been our first.
So either
first note.
Jason, Dan, Momsen, Mon, those guys come to mind. Heaton's Canadian, so
Wheeler, no Wheeler. Wheeler's probably pretty edge case.
Harley anyway. Wheeler,
yeah,
he's in NOLA.
Yeah, he was down NOLA.
Oh, I thought he was in.
Well, he was originally
2 years ago. Yeah,
okay,
and then he was going to go to Chula Vista.
And then I'm trying to think. Will Leonard's not USA eligible to next year, so I know that when ATL came to town to New York, he was here. Got it. But he was looking at New York guys in that particular one. He gave me a list of New York guys at the time. He likes to watch players in their home venues because he really feels that the travel in the MLR kind of
Duncan Van Schalk.
Oh yeah.
Van Schalkwyk, yeah.
But I didn't see him. He didn't make the traveling side.
No,
I don't think so. But yeah, so I think you're right. We didn't have that situation where some of these players that are going on the tour were notified that, hey, your team's not there. But you see guys like Mon was talking about, like
Harley Davidson was the player I was thinking of. I apologize.
Right.
The other Harley.
Yep.
Yeah, Mon was talking about, if you look at his Instagram or Facebook post, he has a business that's in ATL. He's not looking to move out of that business. Right. And we've seen some, I would call them high profile guys hang him up recently. Nick Feeks, Quinn Nawadi, young rugby players that are kind of calling it quits on the career because I believe, they're trying to start careers outside of rugby. Mm-hmm. And, it's a tough lifestyle to come over here. It's especially for the Americans. They're not going back to New Zealand or South Africa or South America where they're playing in places like the NPC, or they're going and playing for their national team, a la Wilton Rabolo, so it's tough. So I think we're going to see a lot of change until we can get that union going. And I think getting a pipeline of players going to South Africa and New Zealand for the off season could be huge in terms of helping develop the league, develop the players.
and allowing them to play year round where they can make a reasonable annual salary.
Yeah. As an aside, it was good to see Cam Davidovitz from New England. He went down, I think, was he with the Turbos, Manawatu Turbos, or somebody like that? So
Turbos signed like 7 or 8 guys, especially from New England.
And
but
it's cool as an American. I mean, he's one of the few Americans who've been able to make that or are making that transition.
And my point is, if they're coming here to play in the MLR, we got to push back a little bit and say, hey, how come guys? We have Cam going over there, but there should be a couple more guys there.
Oh, for sure. There's several guys from the Jakls who should probably be over there and aren't.
And I think that would, again, if you're sending some kids who are USA eligible, it's just going to help them grow in the game and keep them fit.
Did anybody else see the trade of Biddle as a sign that something was coming?
In my opinion, I saw it, but I also went, well, if you looked at Toronto's offense.
But I couldn't believe that Atlanta would give him up for basically peanuts, and then became very clear to me that he wanted to be in Toronto because ATL was no longer going to be in ATL, and that was going to be a better situation for him. That's I immediately, within a few days before they even announced, I was thinking he's got to have wanted to be in Toronto. Why would they have done that trade? I mean, he's worth well more than what they got for him.
Yeah, but sometimes trades aren't necessarily about the worth as much as the player's not going to want to resign, so you're just trying to get anything for him. I think that's where the league is in trades right now. Rob Povey being the guy he wanted to be back in Canada, so they worked the deal out because he didn't want to be down.
But Biddle doesn't have a connection to Canada, Canada directly.
No, but I think in my opinion, the knock on Toronto was not enough foreign players.
Oh, they needed a fly half. They needed another fly half.
Yeah, but
Malcolm doesn't come back.
Yeah, as much as they they have their Rugby Canada guys, I think there is a lack of foreign players on the team that can give them something, especially on the offensive side of the ball and in those key positions like the fly half. Obviously, if you can make a move there to get a guy like Biddle, now you have all the Torontos being like Biddle up the middle, eh? But let's transition to our next topic, right? So we're going to be talking about the USA match against Romania. So Saturday, USA opened up its play schedule against Romania. The first thing I'm going to say real quick, I was disappointed that Rob Ermescu actually wasn't in the lineup against the United States.
Yeah,
our boy Rob, is eligible through his parents. For Romania, he is on their traveling squad, and I heard he's going to be selected for the next match, and might be going on their World Cup squad.
Yeah,
eventually.
well, let's hope. Yeah, I was going to say, let's hope he makes a World Cup squad.
But,
I'd love to see
I just thought, in my opinion, I would feel like I'm always about, and I'm going to give this to Rob to talk about, but just this particular fact, I'm always about the juice. You hear me talk about the MLR. This team has juice, and I feel Rob would have played very well against the United States. Not saying that Romania would have won, but I think the individual play by him would have been great because you do have some juice when you're here in the United States. You go to Penn State, you play at Rooney, you play at ATL. You DC rather. Excuse me. You don't get a look in your home country, and you have to go to your parents' country of origin to really get a serious look. Playing for the club his dad played for now as a professional. So in my opinion, there was some juice there that I think they could have pulled out in a good coaching move, but that's besides the point. So I'm going to hand it over to Rob to talk about the Romanian match, what you thought about it, and then give us something about the upcoming match against Portugal.
Oh boy, a lot to pack on there. First of all, let me just talk about roster. I really liked what I saw out of Scott Lawrence's first outing as head coach. He blooded 9 new caps. What I thought was interesting about that, though, is to put it in some context. 5 are under the age of 30, but only 3 of the 9 will be under the age of 30 by 2027. Mm-hmm. So you got to think about, yes, he's trying to develop a team for the next World Cup cycle. But, again, you're bringing in, of those 9 players, only 3 of them, 1/3 of them are going to be, still relatively young by the time they hit the next World Cup. But I like the fact that he's bringing them in. I think there's a clear intent to try to develop a good leadership process, connect that leadership process with, leadership of old. I know that Dan Lyle and some other Dan Hodges or Dave Hodges, excuse me, and some other captains have come in and worked with the team, and he's really trying to build a history and connect that history with a new culture. Let's see. I have heard good things out of Charlotte. A couple of people I've talked to went to camp, watched it, and average an international game, 42 minutes of ball and play. Scott's trying to replicate that in training, and I think it showed in the match. My concerns: it was a statement game, solid win against a quality qualifying team for Rugby World Cup. You had number 18 USA play number 19 Romania. United States is now number 17. The interesting thing here is that in spite of a really good statement win against one of those teams you need to beat that's really close in the rankings, we played a good 50 to 55 minutes, and then we started to fall into our old habits that have happened under Gary Gold and prior to that, where we just can't close out a team. I mean, we needed a step on the throat. Do I think Scott Lawrence will rectify this in the Portugal game? I do, and I think we need to, because this team against Portugal is ranked 16. They're one ahead of us, and they're also a qualifying team, as is Georgia in 2 weeks' time, which will be on the 19th of August. They're number 11. So these two next games for me are something I'm going to pay real close attention to, because I think that will tell us the direction where Scott's going to take this team over the course of the next 4 years. But let me just say this in closing. Scott Lawrence, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'll echo it from the mountaintops. He is the guy to lead this team forward in 2027, potentially and beyond. He will put this team in the best position to win, and I think they're going to perform under his leadership and tutelage the best they've ever performed. He just is going to need to be given the time and the resources to do so.
Listen, I always trust Rob's assessment, and he's a Scott Lawrence stan. Obviously, he simped for Scott Lawrence, which is okay. It's good to see an old man still have urges like that. So no, but I like your assessment. I'll talk about it after Rick. Rick, what do you got?
Scott Lawrence should have been the coach 10 years ago, and I think it was more of a whether he wanted to deal with USA Rugby at that time. I think the change in leadership in USA Rugby has increased his interest in being interested in coaching the national team. And then I think with Callaway's death, that kind of gave him the opening. That really was like knowing that he was going to leave was a big piece of what's happened with the downfall of ATL. But on a positive note, that, in my opinion, has led to us maybe having the best next 10 years of USA national team rugby development. He's a guy that can obviously take young guys, develop an entire program, and put together a winning team. As we've seen with what Life has done over the last 15, 20 years, and what they built Life into Rugby ATL and the success that they had as with him as head coach and director of rugby. Having said that, I was very disappointed with the last, I would say, people said the last 20 minutes. I think it was more than that. The scrum started to fall apart in about the 55th, 56th minute. I hate to say that, but that was when Jake Turnbull came in for Iscaro. I think Iscaro held up pretty well. And then when Turnbull came in, the scrum just started to disintegrate. I don't know about the young kid who we've literally never seen before, Young Yen.
Yeah, Tajaki Young Yen. Yep.
We got to see like 2 minutes of him. No idea. He looked like he could get around the park, which is good. But really, it told us nothing about whether he can play or not. I would like to see him start against Portugal. I think the combination of Iscaro and him, maybe in the front row with either Joe or Dylan Fawcett. And I would say you might put Fawcett on the bench for this one and start Joe. I don't know what his plan is, but I think we can bully Portugal up front. And I'd like to see them do that. And they should do that. They did that to Romania early, and they should continue to do that. I think Georgia is going to be the real test of our scrum and whether we're, World Rugby worthy or not. And I think we still have a lot of development to do in the, I would say, what is it, young high school, older middle school age kids to get to that point when 2031, we've got a scrum that can really push for, getting to a quarterfinal in World Rugby, in the Rugby World Cup, excuse me. I think second row, I think it was funny. We talked as Jackals fans about Gola not being a lock. He was a flanker, an 8-man coming out of college, and we thought he's a number 6. That's where he should be playing. And of course, Lawrence puts him at 6. And so we're like, we're going to get to see the best of Gola. And I thought he was really, really good. He can absolutely play second row. But I think if you want to have a legitimate scrum that's going to be world class, I'm not sure he fits into that. But you've got to find space for him because he's a phenomenal, phenomenal young player. And I thought he showed up. He wasn't the best player on the field, but you didn't go, oh my God, there's a hole, at 6 for a 23-year-old. I thought he was phenomenal. I actually thought the back row was much better than I expected, especially with Luke White. And no hate at the Luke White stands. There might be one here, but I just don't think he is your traditional number 8. But I thought he did quite well. And I would love to see probably one of the younger guys get a run at a 12-0 or maybe even Colin Gross at 8. So I think we got to see a kind of a mix mash, and the fact that after 55 minutes, we were absolutely dominating this match and should have won by a lot more. In my opinion, they could have run Romania out of the building. I think had they had the desire to do so at that point, I think kind of they felt at that point, we've done what we needed to do to get a win. We still got 2 more matches. That's fine. Portugal's going to be a little bit more of a challenge, and then Georgia's going to be a lot more of a challenge. I'm really excited to see how we match up against Georgia. That's going to be the test of whether we are a legitimate side to push for 27, and then, to see what Scott Lawrence can put together for 31, which is really, obviously 31 with the World Cup being here in the United States. That's going to be the big one. We've got to at least show out. We've got to be close in matches. We can't be losing matches 45-15. That's just not, it's not going to show well for us. I thought the backs were fine. I still think it's a little bit vanilla. There were several plays that showed what we can do when we're not vanilla, and I'd like to see more of that. But you could tell that the boys were having fun, and to me, that was the most important part of this first match. Was they looked like they're actually enjoying themselves. I'm not sure we saw that under Gary Golden. He may be an amazing coach, but I'm not sure I saw any of the American players look like they were enjoying themselves.
Listen, it's if you're not having fun out there, what the hell are you doing? You know what I mean?
We're not getting paid. They're not getting paid to pretend to have fun out there.
Exactly. I do think as far as the lineup goes, I think it was a solid lineup. Just going down the list. You're right. I think Jake Turnbull came in, but you also have to realize Paul Mullen, like you talked about, played like 79 minutes, and Paul Mullen is not built to play 79 minutes. No offense to Paul, but I'm serious. We love him. He's
30. He's turning 31 this year.
And you want him, so I think it was I don't know why. In my opinion, I felt like maybe this is the match you bring Caleb Geiger in, because you have to realize Caleb Geiger has just started doing the tight head duties over at New York. And then he could also play hooker. He's one of those guys that's versatile to do that.
Yeah, I think maybe off the bench he would be a great option because he can play multiple positions. So
yeah, exactly. Well, I'm not saying he should have started, but I'm saying off the. I think Scott Lawrence also wanted to get Takaji and Young some minutes, and it just didn't pan out that way.
Right.
So I understand it. Like, I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying I do think though that Caleb Geiger, when maybe against Georgia, might be a better pick. Having Dylan Fawcett on the bench as well or starting is always a good option, because if you do have injuries down the road, Dylan Fawcett can play 8. You know what I mean? So if you have to move guys interior from the outside and move your 8-man to the exterior, Dylan Fawcett could then move back, and you could put Caleb Geiger, or you could put Joe back in, because Joe could play 80 minutes. So again, not knocking selections. I'm just talking about what we have that you might not have seen against this a good Romanian team. And I think I'm going to say it. Scott Lawrence has that style of play that New York tries to do, where they're up front. They want to be as solid as they can. They want to make their rolling mauls into tries, right? That's just kind of their bread and butter. He's getting back to that. And while I feel like you're right, the back line was a little vanilla. I think their point on this one was, let's fix what we were supposed to be doing right before, right? So we know we can figure out the back line later. We could do basic stuff on the back line, but let's get our set piece right. Let's get our scrum right. Let's get our lineouts right. Let's get our rolling mauls right. And if you see by the fact that Cam Dolan scoring the first one, who was the next one? No, McCarthy Dyer penalty try, which was going to be a rolling maul, and then the Patty Ryan the third, I'm going to call him, coming in, getting his first cap, scoring on the outside there as a loose forward, shows you that you have really 3 forward tries right in this match. Yeah. I do agree the play on the back line was vanilla, but again, I think that was game planning. I think they didn't want to do too much. They wanted to kind of get rolling, and I think you're going to see a little more against Portugal.
They have to do more against Portugal, because the Portuguese backline will eat them up if they're vanilla.
I think the most interesting play was actually when they took out Luke Carty and put in Chris Mattina with the last 4 minutes at 10, because Chris Mattina to me really is a 15. And to be honest, Mitch Wilson is a great player, but he didn't have to do much this match. So maybe you take him out at 60 minutes and give Mattina 20 at 15. You don't need to burn guys out. Like, Mitch Wilson's going to be your fullback starter, right? But you don't need to burn him out early on, in my opinion. I think those are just the little technical things that the coaching staff will get right eventually. You want to gauge where guys are at.
Are we not going to see McGinty until Georgia?
Probably.
That's what my guess would be.
I think they're holding it. Yeah, I would say they're holding him.
And that's why you saw Mattina jump in at 10 rather than 15.
Yeah.
And Mattina can play 10.
He can play 10, but
I think he's a 15. He's a 15.
He likes 15. He likes to be able to see.
Are 10 and 15 the biggest concerns right now? Because none of those guys are young. None of them.
No, they're not.
One of them's under 25.
But
Carty's a young guy, and
he's
Carty's
25.
Carty's not flashy, but he's steady Eddie, and he can change tactics a little bit on you. He's not a super big threat to make a break. He will try to poke a hole or find a soft shoulder, but he'll control the game, and I like to see him get more minutes at 10.
And I think you're going to see, maybe next year or the year after, Scott Lawrence is going to start looking at guys like Connor McManus. Connor McManus is a great 10. Connor McManus is USA eligible.
Okay.
He was born in Manhattan. He is, I think, 23, 24,
the eligibility thing I feel like is killing us, though, the change to 5 years.
Well, but he doesn't, he was born here. You know what I mean? And when you look at I'll go back to New York again, because if you look at guys like Cam Dolan, Greg Peterson, Nate Brakely, obviously not Sam Gala, but even Patty Ryan's kind of a little bit older, but you have a guy at New York in Joe Basser, who is, lived in Australia, but was was born in Manhattan. He's USA eligible.
Yeah.
The 5 years doesn't matter.
Yeah.
For those two guys, the 5 years doesn't matter, and they're young enough when we're coming into that cycle at 2031. I'm not saying you transition them now and maybe not even next year, but you have to start transitioning them. And my point is, look at what the French did. The French 4 years ago said, fuck the Six Nations tournament, and they bled every young French player they had and got their ass kicked. And then the next year they were fucking winning and beating everybody because they had young, bright, fast players. And that's what we need to do. And that's not to knock on Cam Dolan and the guys who've done it before. There needs to be a transition. You can't just transition completely out of it.
I asked Cam. He said he's done.
Oh yeah. I know.
There's not.
I love Cam. He's World Cup wise. Yes.
Yeah.
But my point is, you don't just throw him on the trash heap either, because a lot of guys can learn how to travel with the team and do this and do that, and all that stuff that you can learn from veterans. Well, so I think you're going to see more not this cycle, but post Rugby World Cup cycle. You're going to see a lot more transition to young guys.
Here's the thing. I think you need guys like Cam Dolan. I don't know how old Butch is. I'm sure the big guy knows. Probably has his birth certificate on file in his office. But those two guys were absolute rocks in one of the phases of the set piece that you need right in the line out. Right, you need a guy like Cam who can direct that line out, and then provide some toolage for somebody else to kind of pass that baton
like
over.
Gola.
Yeah, and Butch was money with his throws. I mean, absolute friggin' money, right? And that's what you need to own the set piece. So, you're going to carry, I think you're going to see Scott carry those guys forward a little bit just to be able to provide that transition and toolage for young guys that they want to see come in that are going to be the foundation for.
Well, that's a guy. Caleb Geiger and Sam Gola are the two guys in this squad, I think, and Luke Carty, the three guys in this squad that are really. Scott's trying to set them up for the 2031 run. Because, I mean, if you can get a guy like Caleb Geiger.
They'll be the seniors on that team.
Exactly. And you're talking about if you get to watch Caleb Geiger play prop, I would say the game against Chicago is where he learned a lot. He was going against Lerome White, and talking to him after that, he started to feel Lerome pitch out to turn him, and he anticipated and felt it to stay straight. And that's like a big light bulb for a lot of props, that you don't understand it until it just kind of slaps you in the face. And that was his biggest thing, was getting turned. That's something sometimes you can't really simulate in practice because both guys are trying to go straight, right? But in the game, you're trying to turn him, especially if the referee is on the other side. So in him saying, I felt his hips move and I felt his shoulders start to move, and that's when I set myself up and posted. And
I was asking Rob about his prediction for.
Go for it.
Portugal.
My bad. Go for
it. Well, I think against Portugal, I think he's going to test the back line a little bit, let them open the floodgates and see what they can do, put a little bit more flavor into things. I think we can dominate their scrum and the set piece in totality a little bit more easily than we could with Romania. So, I think he might sprinkle in some guys to get them a little bit more experience. But I think the back line is the one to watch. I'll be interested to see what they do. And ultimately, I think what we're going to see the lineup, at least for the foreseeable future, that you want to see going and getting a lot of tick is going to be against the third match against
Georgia.
Yeah. That's
Rick, what's your prediction?
I really like to see a very similar back line to what we saw against Romania, but like Rob said, let them open up a little bit, try some different things. Obviously, there's nothing to lose here. We've got to get guys out there as well, so I wouldn't be totally shocked to see Linalatu on the bench and getting minutes, hopefully 20, 30 minutes at least. I'd like to see Lopete maybe get a few more minutes as well.
What about Foodie? Isn't Foodie isn't he on the traveling?
And Foodie at wing.
Yes.
So those are the three guys I think should be at least on the bench for this match. And maybe the starting lineup, keep it the same, but get those guys out there earlier. And I would like to see them play a little bit more with the backs.
And
Just
I'm
a little
with
bit more fun.
I'm with Scott, man. I think you go maybe you put Paul Mullen out for the first 45, 50 minutes, and then you bring in, punch him in the mouth, as Scott likes to say, and then bring in a guy like Caleb Geiger, who's just a physical specimen who can take advantage of his opposition just with his physicality.
Yeah, I think the only thing for me is I would like to see more of Yin, just to see like what he can do, because as far as I know, I've not really seen him do anything yet. He ran around for like 2 minutes. So I'd like to see more of him. I don't know if it's him coming off the bench, but he came in for
Paul Mullen.
Yeah, in like the 78th minute.
Yeah. It wasn't anything. I don't even know if they got a scrum in.
No, I think he got a line out. He
Yeah.
was a lifter on one of the line outs, and then he ran with the ball once, I think. And that was all we got to see of him. So I'd like to see more of him. And maybe this isn't the match for it. Maybe it's Georgia off the bench earlier. But would like to see, like, do we have a young prop that can play? Because he's 24. Everybody else is 26 or older on the front row.
I don't remember. Oh, what the fuck? Who was it? If he was on the traveling squad, who's the young kid? Oh, it's gonna piss me off, dude.
Klein, the hooker, Shiloh Klein?
No. God damn it. I can't remember his name. I got baby brain.
I mean, Mason Peterson's there. I can't believe he's only 26.
I'm thinking was he a DC guy?
Is it Carl?
No. Frig. Who the hell am I thinking of?
I don't know.
Anyway. But yeah,
I'm impressed by Ascara though. I thought he really played well.
Yeah, he played very well. But yeah, I think going into Portugal, I think you maybe have a little bit of a younger pack and an older, stick with an older back line but make the back line work. I mean, Don't get me wrong. Do what you're going to do in the set piece, but make the back line work. Make sure your guys, especially if you're going to have younger forwards out there, make sure you're getting out to your pods, because those guys can make some breaks. That's another part of of what I always see with a lot of our USA Rugby guys, especially those outside the flankers and the 8-mans. They get out to those pods, and you have guys like Hanko Hermesites who get out to that pod, get that ball, and go. And that's just kind of what we do, and I think we need to get back to that, especially with guys like Sam Gala and Paddy Ryan and Luke White, and Tuava'o and all that.
We need to see Colin Gross in this next match. I think
that's another one. That's an interesting one. I think you want him in there. You want to blood him early to get
for sure
what you need to get.
He's going to get murdered by Georgia.
I think, for sure. I think Paddy Ryan, though, I thought Paddy Ryan's 24, but I tried to do some research on him and I wasn't able to find his.
I've got him at 24.
I think he's 24, maybe 24.
I thought he brought as much physicality to the game as Hanko Hermesites.
He very similar,
except doesn't commit the penalties, which is critical.
Well, and that's where I say, where does Jameson Fonanana Schultz end up? Because he played great with DC this year and was not his hot-headed self this year, and had a complete turnaround, to which I feel like he earned a spot to get some playing time. I'm just saying
they're only carrying 4 back row players.
I know that's why I feel I feel a certain way about it, because I feel like his MLR season, he proved it.
And none of them are 8-men. They're not carrying one 8-man on this entire squad. Dolan and Gola are the closest thing to 8-men, and they're both listed as locks.
But like I said, you can also Caleb Geiger has played 8 for New York as well. So you have the 2 guys from New York. I'm just saying the 2 guys from New York Rugby can play 8 if you need them
this
to.
Guy just
you have no, but my point is you always have to carry the props and the hookers anyway. So you might as well have those guys, and then you can put them in on the bench, and then God forbid a lock goes down or 2 locks go down, which has happened before. We've seen it happen to Major League Rugby teams, and guys have to shift, and all of a sudden you have those people.
You have a lot of experienced players who can play multiple positions.
Right. I'm saying the back 5, there are a lot of guys.
I asked James Dealey, and he couldn't confirm this on MLR stats, but I'm pretty sure Dylan Fawcett led the MLR in 2023 in 50-22 kicks. So he could actually play 10 if we needed him to.
Okay,
Anyway, guys,
There's no way
that's where we're gonna wrap. That's where we're gonna wrap it up
Yeah.
right now. We had a really long episode. I'm kind of glad it was fun on these long episodes. But guys, thank you so much for watching. Rick, thank you so much for being on the show. And we're actually going to see Rick next week, because next week our Thursday show is going to be live draft event. We're going to be doing our live draft event. Rick and the Jakl Den are going to be at the Rugby Union Pub.
We're going to be at the Rugby House Pub in Plano, it looks like. Everybody voted for that, and they've got a whole separate section with 3 TVs for us.
Nice. So if you're in the area, if you're in the Plano area, go check out the Rugby House Pub. Get on anytime the Jakls are making their pick. We're going to have Rick and the boys on to talk about it and give us a little bit of debrief.
I'll be on the entire 3rd round, it looks like.
Yeah, Jakls have a lot of picks. It's going to be fun. But Rick, thank you so much again for coming on. We really appreciate it. And this was a great episode. Rob, can't wait till next Thursday, buddy. I'm really excited.
Getting geeked
But
up.
fans, we'll see you live next Thursday.